Grandpa didn't need high-tech gear or fancy gadgets to enjoy the great outdoors. With just a canvas tent, a few tools, and a whole lot of know-how, he turned every camping trip into a comfortable, well-planned adventure. Over the years, he passed down clever tricks, some practical, some resourceful, and all worth remembering. These are the kinds of camping hacks that still hold up today and might just save your next trip. So grab your pack, roll up your sleeves, and let's get into Grandpa's 42 old camping hacks you'll wish you knew sooner. First, Grandpa always packed a bar of soap in a mesh bag and tied it to the water jug. That way, it was always handy for quick washes, and no one lost it in the grass or mud. After a long day of hiking or fishing, he'd hang the jug on a tree branch, scrub up with cold water, and feel good as new. It kept things simple, tidy, and far more hygienic than passing around a sticky bar wrapped in a paper towel. He made his own fire starters using dryer lint stuffed into cardboard egg cartons and soaked with melted wax. These homemade starters lit instantly, burned hot for several minutes, and worked even when the wood was a little damp. He kept a handful in a Ziploc bag and said they beat store-bought kindling every time. Cheap, reliable, and straight from the laundry room. Mundram, to keep his matches dry, Grandpa sealed them inside a small mason jar or film canister lined with cotton balls. He also dipped the match heads in melted candle wax to waterproof them. When it was time to light a fire, he'd scrape off the wax and strike. Even in the rain, those matches sparked like they were fresh from the box. He never camped without a few binder clips. They held tarps tight, sealed snack bags, kept socks hung to dry, and even clamped utensils to tables to keep them from rolling off. Light, cheap, and multi-use, he said binder clips were a camper's best friend and took up no space in the pack. A quick lantern light, Grandpa placed a headlamp around a gallon jug of water with the beam facing inward. The water diffused the light beautifully, creating a soft, glowing lantern perfect for lighting up the picnic table or inside the tent. It used the same light source he wore on hikes, but turned it into an ambient glow for the whole group. Instead of a pillow, he stuffed a flannel shirt with spare clothes and tied off the arms. It was comfortable, packed small, and always smelled like campfire and clean laundry. He never saw the point in lugging a bulky pillow when a shirt did double duty, and it made crawling into the sleeping bag feel a bit more like home. To stop mosquitoes from biting around the campfire, Grandpa tossed a few sprigs of sage or rosemary onto the flames. The fragrant smoke helped keep the bugs at bay and made the campsite smell incredible. It worked far better than sprays alone and didn't leave your skin sticky or your tent smelling like chemicals. When camping near water, he tied a length of rope between two trees and used it as a makeshift clothesline. But he didn't just drape things over it. He twisted the rope and stuck the corners of clothing between the twists. It held them tight without clothespins, even in the wind, and everything dried faster out in the breeze. Grandpa made a habit of marking trails with small ribbons of bright fabric tied to branches or shrubs, especially when exploring unfamiliar woods. He collected them on the way back to avoid leaving a trace. It was a simple way to stay oriented and taught all of us to respect the land while staying safe. For clean hands before meals, he hung a water bottle with a nail poked near the bottom and plugged with a toothpick. Pull the toothpick, and you've got a hand-washing station with controlled flow. He kept soap tied to the neck and a small towel hanging from a branch nearby. Everyone washed up, and the camp stayed clean without waste or fuss. Grandpa always kept duct tape wrapped around his water bottle, not the roll, just a few feet of it wrapped flat. It came in handy for fixing tents, patching tarps, reinforcing tool handles, or even sealing up food containers. Compact, silent, and always ready. It was a trick he used on almost every trip. He made a mini first aid kit in an Altoids tin. Inside were bandages, antiseptic wipes, tweezers, pain relievers, and a bit of tape. It slipped into any pocket and was always there for cuts, splinters, or bug bites. He called it peace of mind in your back pocket, and it truly was. To keep ants and bugs out of food, Grandpa placed each leg of the table or cooler in a shallow tin of water. Ants couldn't climb past the moat, and the food stayed safe. It was one of those tricks you never thought of until you had to brush bugs off your sandwich one too many times. Stored spices and seasonings in old film canisters or empty Tic Tac containers. salt, pepper, garlic powder, cinnamon, all labeled and ready to use. He said meals tasted better around the campfire, but only if you packed a little flavor. His foil potatoes and skillet eggs were legendary. When he needed a way to keep drinks cold without a cooler, he'd place bottles in a mesh bag and lower them into a cool stream. Tied to a tree root or large rock, they chilled within an hour and stayed fresh all afternoon. It was nature's fridge, and it worked like a charm. To keep his knife sharp in the wild, Grandpa used the bottom of a ceramic mug. The unglazed ring underneath worked like a whetstone. With a few gentle strokes, he brought the edge back to life. It wasn't fancy, but it worked, and it meant he never had to carry extra sharpening tools. The inside of the tent started smelling stale. He tossed in a few dryer sheets. They didn't just freshen the air, they kept spiders and ants away too. He said it made the tent feel clean even when you hadn't showered in 2 days. Plus, crawling into bed next to the scent of lavender just felt good. For quick fire starting, Grandpa packed cotton balls soaked in petroleum jelly. Stored in a small tin, they lit with just a spark, even in wind or light rain, and burned long enough to get kindling going. He said they were better than firelighters, and a lot cheaper too. Grandpa used old tin cans as makeshift lantern holders. He'd punch holes in the sides, drop in a small tea light, and hang them from tree branches using wire. The holes created a flickering glow that lit up the campsite softly without drawing too many bugs. He called them firefly jars and used them year after year. Sleeping bag dry on dewy mornings, he'd line the inside of his tent with a cheap vinyl tablecloth. It acted as a barrier between the ground sheet and his bedding, stopping condensation from soaking through. It also made cleanup easier. He'd just shake it out before packing up. Cooking over the fire, Grandpa pre-cracked eggs into a mason jar before the trip. He stored them in the cooler and gave them a quick shake before pouring into the skillet. No broken shells to deal with at camp, and breakfast was ready in minutes. It was one of those small things that made the morning smoother. Even if he had matches. He said it was faster, safer in the breeze, and more reliable in a pinch. It fit into his shirt pocket next to his folding knife and gave him confidence no matter what the weather threw at him. Grandpa kept a plastic cereal container as his camp trash bin. Lined with a grocery bag and sealed tight with a lid, it kept odors in and critters out. It was compact, leak-proof, and easy to pack out when camp was over. He said if you pack it in, you pack it out, and do it neatly. When it came to storing toilet paper, Grandpa had a clever trick. He placed the roll inside a clean coffee can or plastic jar to keep it dry and clean. A slit in the side let him pull out just what he needed. Rain, bugs, or mud never ruined his TP, and that made all the difference. He made a cooling neck wrap from an old bandana and some rice. He'd soak it in cold water, then wrap it around his neck while hiking. It stayed cool for hours and could be refreshed with a dip in a stream. On scorching days, it was his secret weapon against heat exhaustion. Keeping gear dry, Grandpa lined his backpack with a heavy-duty contractor trash bag before packing anything inside. If it rained, his clothes, food, and sleeping bag stayed bone dry, even if the pack itself was soaked. It weighed nothing and worked better than fancy rain covers. He always used aluminum foil as his catch-all cooking tool. From wrapping fish to lining pans to building makeshift lids, foil did it all. He even made foil packets for cooking potatoes, onions, and sausage right in the coals. They came out hot, juicy, and full of flavor every single time. With bears or raccoons, Grandpa used a simple pulley system with rope, a tree branch, and a canvas bag. He hoisted the food high off the ground and a few feet from the trunk. It was old-school bear bagging, and it worked better than any modern container. Around camp at night, he wrapped reflective tape around his tent lines and stakes. That way, his flashlight beam picked them up instantly, and he didn't trip over anything. It was especially helpful when the fire was low and the stars were bright. To mark his tent in crowded campgrounds, Grandpa tied a bandana or bright-colored ribbon to the top of the rainfly. From a distance or in a sea of tents, he could spot his shelter right away. It was such a small touch, but it saved time and avoided awkward moments of walking into the wrong tent. He always kept a small whistle on a lanyard, especially when taking kids along. He told us 3 short blasts meant help, and 1 meant, I'm over here. In dense woods or on unfamiliar trails, it was a simple safety system that didn't rely on phones or radios. 32. To keep mosquitoes out of the tent, he sprinkled a line of baby powder around the base. The fine dust made it harder for bugs to cross and added a clean scent to the campsite. He also swore by rubbing a dryer sheet over exposed skin in a pinch to keep bugs away. He used a frisbee as both a plate and a cutting board. Sturdy, easy to clean, and just the right size for breakfast or lunch, it doubled as a game tool when not in use. It was one of those perfect multi-use items that only a grandpa would boil water faster over a campfire. Grandpa placed a lid, or even just a flat pan, over the pot. It trapped the heat and halved the time it took. He said even in the woods, time saved boiling water was time earned enjoying the fire or the stars. Emergency repairs, he always packed a sewing needle and dental floss. Stronger than thread and easy to tuck in with your toothbrush, floss fixed torn gear, replaced shoelaces, and even stitched up a ripped backpack strap more than once. 36th. He froze water bottles and used them as cooler packs. Not only did they keep the food cold, but as they melted, they turned into clean drinking water. It was one less thing to carry, and it kept the cooler from filling with dirty ice water. To keep his gear smelling fresh, he tossed a few charcoal briquettes in a breathable pouch and stored them in the tent bag. The charcoal absorbed moisture and odors between trips, so everything smelled crisp when it was unpacked again. Grandpa always saved soap slivers and melted them into one bar using a little heat and a silicone mold. At camp, he'd slice off a thin piece to bring along, just enough for a few washes. It saved space and gave new life to old scraps.